Over 70% of the population are meat and seafood eaters. Most of them depend on their neighborhood butcher for meat supply. Almost 90% of the meat market is unorganized, often termed as unhygienic wet market. But for two friends, this became an opportunity. Abhay Hanjura and Vivek Gupta, the men behind unique, ready-to-eat, Licious products. The most reliable farm-to-fork brand for meat and seafood in India. Licious changed the way people looked at meat. No black bags with smelly meat. Just temperature-controlled meat delivered to your doorstep in a white box.
I'm Jasper Reed, and this is Billion Dollar Idea. Welcome to the show. We're delighted today to be joined by Vivek and Abhay, the incredible founders of Licious. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jasper.
We're honoured, of course, to have you here. We're always honoured to have guests here. And this is a bit of an innovation on two counts. One is I'm in the UK on tour. The other is this is the first show where we've had the two founders together. So it's fantastic to see you both. Look, let's get going. The story of you getting together is pretty well trailed. One guy kind of has the idea. The other guy's in finance. They get together. Finance guy's a bit skeptical, sends him away, guy comes back, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're worth $800 million. It sounds incredibly simple. Is that really the true story, guys?
Of course, why would we make that? We have no reason to make it up.
Yeah. So Jasper, just to put some color in this story, actually the story is true. I think the consumer part of the story was always exciting for both of us. What I was skeptical about just the meat, and two reasons. One is I come from a hardcore vegetarian family background. So, I picked up eating meat, when I was in US. The second was, if this is that exciting, it's, let's say, a $30-40 billion market, I was asking myself why anybody else has not done it. So these two things was, keeping me skeptical. But I think credit to, Abhay, who just kept on nudging me, pushing me, and took some promises from me, when I was not in the state to give promises. And finally, I landed here.
And Abhay, tell me, so I know you guys knew each other from previous business dealings, and you were kind of in the insurance world, like the polar opposite of the meat world. But why Vivek? And have you ever doubted that choice?
No, never. I think it was like this. A lot of things just sort of simultaneously fell into place. But let me be honest. I first went to him just because he was my venture capitalist friend, right? And these guys were so thick into the startup ecosystem back then. So I first of all went to him, with the idea saying, hey, what do you think about it? Right. And obviously, he sort of dismissed me. And then, as we, went on spending time on, fleshing this out, literally, I kind of figured that our motivations are similar. The things that we are excited about are pretty much are fundamentally same. And, somewhere I felt there's a natural connect of our long-term aspirations. So, it was not about money anytime, Jasper, So whenever I would ask Vivek, hey, what beyond this fancy venture capital job that, anyone would want to retire from in this big, nice cabin, right? So the answer was not in money. The answer was in, hopefully, creating something which outlives us, outlasts us. And I think that was the common thread that sort of brought us together. And I said, why don't you stop preaching and, start, executing with me? So it was as simple as that, So
Jasper, he didn't add that he wanted somebody better than him.
Of course.
Okay, well, and Abhay, I totally get it. So, but turning to you, Vivek, so, I'm familiar from my own business with institutional finance. And so you're sitting in Helion Ventures. That's kind of a comfortable seat. Same family you talked about before, pretty happy with their guy. Okay, what was the motivation to leave? So Abhay's saying it's about, changing the world, etc. But, why did you want to do that? What had happened to you?
So very interesting question. So actually, when I joined Helion, I was 24, 25 years old. Okay. And slowly, we were in 2013, we had around 75 portfolio companies, and all of us were spending time with portfolio companies and, giving some gyan. But I felt that, I did not have enough experience of executing myself, right? So there is no operational context which I had personally. So this thing was always a missing piece in the whole puzzle. How do you go and give advice when you have yourself not executed? And very rarely you get that opportunity, to go back in the, in the executional world. With Abhay coming in and pushing me that hard, actually somewhere, that piece was getting ticked. And when I actually came to Licious side, I was thinking that 5 years I will execute this, have some quick successes and go back to investment world. But, after coming this side, I realized that this side is so much more exciting. I don't know whether I'll ever go back to the investing side again.
And we'll get on to financing in a second, but here's a naughty question for you. How is it that and you're involved with Goldman and Sistema and Premji and Bertelsmann, all sorts of people. How is it people in those organizations with zero operational experience even know how to invest in firms? You probably don't want to answer that, but
this is a tough one. I think this is advice to everybody. I think they should ask themselves before giving executional advices to founders that what have people executed.
Okay, very good. So Abhay, let's get over to you. So you're in the insurance world, which kind of ostensibly is to do with finance, but all of a sudden you're into operating, and of course you're into capital, right? No money, no honey. How have you thought about raising finance? And I think you're on record of saying that, you prefer to go slower, stay in control, be less the kind of servant of private equity. But, you're $800 million worth now, right? Inevitably, you've got a lot of vested interest and a lot of returns, hungry LPs, hungry GPs looking for returns. How are you handling all of this, and how's that journey been, Abhay?
That guy handles that bit better than me. So, it's horses for courses. I mean, look, I will just possibly start with some context, and Vivek can lend depth. It's about, the dog wagging the tail instead of the tail wagging the dog, right? I mean, as we went about thinking about building Licious, the role that money had to play in our lives was the role that money had to play in our lives. But money was not going to solve for brass tacks, right? So there was a lot to be figured out in this industry because no one had figured that out. And, therefore for us, the question was really that, in the initial part of our journey, the role that capital has to play is to simply allow us to, get over the existential question, right? Because I think in the early days, startups struggle with that fear quite a lot, right? Looking into the driving while looking into the rear view mirror. So I think initially that's the role, capital really played in our lives, while we sort of stayed deep, and figured out the complexities of consumer, because in India, the consumer is multi-layered, there's not, one kind of consumer. The category had its own nuances. The supply chain was fully broken, right? So that's how we stayed deep, utilized the capital that we had in those days to, work for us, super efficiently before we really got the answer in the form of a playbook, that we could then, spin a flywheel with. And then capital was a means to, simply propel forward. But I think in our context, that's the role that it played initially. And believe me, Jasper, capital did not come easy, back then. Those were the days where, quote unquote pedigree, was attracting money, right? And both of us had everything but, right, pedigree, because in India that meant having a fancy IIT or an IIM degree, right? And it meant that you had to have some sort of, lineage like that. Venture capitalists didn't even understand this business in India back then. So you look at our cap table early on, right? There's a German investor, there's a Korean investor, there's a Russian investor, there's a Japanese investor, right? But there was no Indian investor because, anybody hardly got it, right? And they're like, what the hell is this? And in fact, most of the venture capitalists in India were vegetarians, by the way, right? So anyways, it was like a bouncer. But yeah, I mean, look, we executed the hell out of this in the early days, right? And I think that, like I said, till the time we got to the flywheel, after that, capital became a means to propulsion, really. But the investor pressure, exit, so on and so forth, maybe Vivek can speak to that. Why don't you go for it?
Yeah, so just two quick ones, Jasper, here. One, I think performance decides the conduct, right? If you keep performing, I think everybody, just aligns with you. Second, the way me and Abhay build that relationship with our investor set is, be very, very honest and transparent. So, when we actually do our board meetings, these are just candid chats like we are having with you. So anything plus, minus, we just talk. So that has also kept us, have a very, very different kind of relationship with all of them around. So they understand in bad times that, we are solving for something which is very long run. And, in good times, obviously, everybody, is there. And the magic result which we got with this relationship is all of our existing investors who invested from 2015 onwards have been continuously investing in this journey even now.
Okay, well, that's fascinating, and it's fantastic. You've got the faith and the follow-on of various investors. We'll get into the kind of blood and guts of the business, sort of, so to speak, in a minute or two. But before we do that, you live in a competitive world. You might have, to an extent, had a first mover advantage. But just cutting to the chase, what is it that's truly defensible about Licious versus fresh to home, easy meat, all these other guys, right? Because as the market, you've had a great run. Can you defend it, and why?
We had two philosophies here. One is it's a $30 billion market in 2015, which is growing at 18% CAGR. Indian per capita protein consumption is kind of the lowest in the world. We said that over next 2 decades, when India per GDP grows, per capita income grows, people will consume more proteins, and chicken is the cheapest source of protein from that sense. This will continue to grow very, very fast. And the competition is not between these startups. The competition is with the larger market, which is unorganized. And both of us keep saying Mr. Premji's famous quote that, winners come in competition. So that was another thing which was never, bothering both of us.
There's an interesting story to this, Jasper. When I was, me and Vivek were fleshing out Licious. I remember in his office, he said something in Hindi. I'll translate to you in English. He said, dude, if we can put life back into this dead chicken, that's when we'll be able to build something, that we can be truly proud of. And, that's the thing, that's the only thing that Licious focused on for the first 2 years in its journey. We figured that, great marketing will kill a bad product or a bad, a bad company faster, right? We figured there's no point having a, fantastic e-commerce, platform, but the moment you open my, meat packet, it starts smelling, right? So we figured on, the core first, right? And the core is really that, the Licious product experience is eons ahead, of whatever is out there. And that's because we've made significant investments in supply chain, in animal husbandry, in meat science, in processing technology, packaging technology, which literally puts life back into, that dead animal. And look, this is a very different category, Jasper, and you will relate to it being a meat eater, that, you don't get excited by the thought of a, tomato or a potato or a cauliflower or whatever else, right? But in India or wherever else in the world, meat is such a visceral sensorial experience, right? So the consumer has that deep relationship with the product and the category, right? Once you're able to bring that alive, right, in the consumer's mind, the consumer is in love with you.
Okay, so are we saying here that we've got a ton of functional elements to your business, a vertically integrated supply chain, huge teams, scientists, you've got the lot. But is this basically a brand play? Is that what you're saying? I mean, I've heard you described as the Tesla of chicken. I wonder what Mr. Musk thinks about that.
This category lends itself beautifully to branding. And I'll give you a piece of trivia. Do you know the word branding has its origins in the category of meat? Because, early on, cattle owners used to brand their animals. But it's ironic that in a country like India, the category has been relegated to the dirty wet markets. It belongs in a black color polythene bag, right? Whereas the consumer's sort of relationship with the product is so sensorial, is so deep, is so experiential, that it lends itself perfectly, to the opportunity to create an iconic brand in this category.
Okay, so staying on branding, if this is a branding play, I mean, we can see behind Abhay ways of animating superheroes, right? Yeah. How do you, in practical terms, animate a chicken? I mean, there are many entrepreneurs that kind of, they can do the functional stuff, but when it comes to emotional branding, how does that work?
This is a pack of Licious meat.
That's not a chicken.
There is chicken inside that.
Okay, but that's it. But it's interesting, Abhay. Is that what you do? I mean, we've seen the recent commercials with the Kapoors, and that's a sort of objective correlative device of having famous, entertaining people kind of, to a certain extent, take your mind off chicken. But how have you done this? Have you hired expensive agencies? Have you gone to Wolf Olins, J. Walter Thompson? Or is it coming from you guys? Just tell us a bit about that.
Well, look, getting agencies, etc., is a part of the, communication strategy. But look, in India, consumers know better than, to just simply rely upon brand speak, right? I mean, branding is also about being able to ladder up the functional, the rational, and the emotional in a believable way, right? I mean, so I think the consumer has to really connect with, all of this messaging and take away the fact that, there's more to meat, from Licious than anywhere else, right?
Okay. And so staying on, or moving on to team, if you like, Abhay and Vivek, maybe a question for Vivek. So, you've gone from a unit of one to then a unit of two to a much bigger organism. I can't remember whether your staff or your customers are called Licians, but there's a lot of Licians out there, whether they're customers or, there's thousands of these Licians. Tell us about how you've built the team. You're famously vocal on things like culture and equality and the brotherhood of beef. So the brotherhood of meat, I should say, scratch the beef comment. But tell us how that's all worked.
Actually, it was very, very important in this space earlier when me and Abhay joined hands together that we need some experts, right? We didn't come from meat expertise. And it was also not easy, and we did not have money to throw to hire people. So the first thing me and Licious did, so me and Abhay did, is park 20% of our company for our people. Okay, and the first gentleman we onboarded was Joe Manwalan, who is also a co-founder with us, and who brought the meat expertise, the culinary piece, of Licious journey. And this was our vision. So we didn't actually hire people; we brought them as part and parcel of our journey. And last year, you'll be surprised to hear that we are the first company to extend that stock options to our delivery heroes, to our meat technicians who are working in our processing centers. And we extended that stock options to thousands of Licians. So, and we keep talking to our people. The only thing we find, and I think it's one of our biggest inspiration, is the association of pride which people have in bringing a change in this sector. And we generally say that, taking meat out of this black color polythene. So that is actually a rage between all the Licians today.
Okay, let's steer this ship into, I don't know what we'll call our ship, the SS Rooster or something. Let's steer the SS Rooster into slightly choppier waters and talk a bit about some of the big topics in your trade under the heading ECG. So I have twin daughters, and last weekend they made me watch a documentary called Seaspiracy, right? All about overfishing and all about the iniquities of that trade. Apparently there's another one called Cowspiracy, which I'm resisting watching, which has nothing to do with you guys. But where do you guys stand on that? Because it's a really big topic, right? Over farming, overfishing. You guys do an amazing job in terms of what you do, but where do you stand on all this?
It's going to be a bit unrealistic and lopsided to sort of bring in a Western context, to India. you look at UK, you look at US, or any of these countries. I think these countries are at in excess of 60 to 100 kilo per capita consumption, and India is barely scratching at 6 kilos right now, right? And the state of evolution of the supply chain, so on and so forth, versus what is happening in India is so different, right? So India is still struggling with brass tacks issues, right? Today we don't even have simple farm management protocols which are in place homogeneously across the supply chain. Today we don't even have third generation farmers who are willing to get into animal husbandry as a profession because in past they've not reaped the results from it. So one, it's a bit lopsided to borrow entirely from the Western context.
Again, I think that's great to hear. In terms of how you carve up the pie between the two of you, does one or the other of you take the lead on things like sustainability?
Yeah, we do. So generally we say that there is all the functions are actually, it is not 100% inseparable, but we become primary and secondary lead on things between us. And obviously, so the whole quality piece, ESG piece, Abhay takes the lead.
But let's move a bit from kind of corporate matters to personal matters. Anyone that's built what you're building works hard, right? Works really hard. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of ups and downs, the rest of it. How do you personally, let's start with Abhay, let's say, how do you personally stay sane? Do you believe in things like mental health? That's all the rage at the moment. How do you stay fit? Tell us a bit about your personal habits.
I think for an entrepreneur, the greatest blessing that, at least for me personally, has been the fact that I'm not alone on this journey. So having a co-founder, with you in the trenches makes a significant difference to, your ability to deal with the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. So first of all, I think Vivek is my greatest buffer in life, really, because, I may not be right 100% of times. I may not be sure 100% of times. I may not be at my best 100% of times. That's where, he comes in and, he keeps me sane. He keeps me, happy, motivated. He keeps me in check. In fact, if you see the way we've split our responsibilities in such a way that, we have a maker-checker mechanism everywhere, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to say again what Abhay has said. I think I love you too, Bhai. So, I think this is important piece. The second, I do actually a couple of things. One, I just love playing badminton. The way I define this, during your day, you should find at least few hours where you forget everything. Okay. And the best way of forgetting things I figured out is, playing something, sports. So badminton is one thing which I just love. Badly, and when I am in that game, I don't remember anything else. Last 6 months ago, I even started focusing a little bit on yoga, while I have to still get hold on my thinking ability and contracted. So while my teacher keeps saying me that bring your focus on your breathing, etc., I have to still get hold of that. But I think sports is one thing which always keeps me going.
When you're at the end of the track, looking back, and I know this is hard to imagine now, what do you want to say? What do you want people to say about you? Let's wrap up on kind of how you want to be seen when you're looking down from the summit. God willing, you get to the summit.
Yeah, in terms of Licious, I think, all these $1 billion or numbers or revenues are all milestones. I don't think this is the end of the story. Every time me and Abhay writes a business plan for the company, we always feel that we are not dreaming big enough. But the real success will be when this category in India, the word meat will get replaced by Licious.
A true brand is one that stands the test of generations. So, I'll be delighted if 4 generations out, 150 years later, somebody takes a, bite of, the meat that, comes from Licious and says, man, what do these guys, put in this meat? It's so incredible. I think not to get diluted over a period of time and not to get complacent. And if we can, if we can truly be immortal, I think that'll be that'll give me a lot of satisfaction. So far as I am concerned, or Vivek is concerned, how do you want people to remember us? Personally, for me, if what will give me the greatest pride is, if the nation looks back, and says that, hey, a bunch of mavericks, came out of nowhere in 2015 and pretty much changed the course of consumption for good, for this nation, for this ecosystem, for the society, for the economy. I think what Amul did to, milk and dairy with Dr. Kurian, I know it's an audacious sort of a, bar, but if that can happen, I'll be sleeping peacefully in my grave then.
Well, I think that's fantastic. And perhaps in 4 generations' time, Abhay, they'll be eating Licious, in a kind of Mars space station set up originally by Mr. Bezos or something like that. Gentlemen, it's been fantastic to have you. At this rate, we're going to have a new show called $2 or $3 billion Ideas to get you back on. But we really look forward to talking to you. Best of luck on your journey and look forward to meeting in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasper. Love chatting with you. Thank you. Thank you so much.